I'm Chandler Ferrebee. I'm the program manager for the Virginia Film Festival. Thank you so much for watching Private Chat. I'm here with the director, Ben Hozie, actor Peter Vack, producer Oliver David, and Nikki Belfiglio, the associate producer and also plays Emma. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Hey.
How are things in Virginia?
They're good. They're good. Yeah, it's all virtual all the time, but it's all right. This movie's obviously pretty wild. How did this idea come to be? How did this project start?
Well, I came up with the idea maybe in like 2015. I believe I wrote the first draft. At the time, I had been making, I don't want to say old-fashioned, but sort of
You just said it.
sealed films, though. They were, I mean, that's not entirely fair. The first film I made was about Occupy Wall Street in some ways, but the style was so much like not of its time. So I decided, you know, if I'm going to make a really interesting film, it needs to reflect my generation. So obviously not obviously, I would say for me, the most important thing about our generation is the way we're interacting with computers and the way those computers are changing our consciousness. They're thinking for us in some ways. So I would crystallize that idea in a love story about people that meet over the internet and, you know, meet in a superficial way over the internet. Shortly after that, I met Oliver. We did a bunch of films together. We did another project with all three of us, actually, funny enough. And Oliver was encouraging, decided to produce it. And I'd known Peter for a while, but kind of thought he would play one of the side characters in the film. And it wasn't until much later that I saw his own film, Assholes. Have you ever seen that?
I haven't.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's worth watching, everybody in Virginia. And yeah, I just saw something in Peter that, one of the key things about Private Chat is, so it's a story about a guy who's addicted to talking to cam girls. So you could very easily imagine a version of the story about, for lack of a better word, like an incel type character, like a really kind of gross, creepy guy lives in his mom's basement. You know, we've all seen that kind of character before, right? And it's not like Jack is a little angel. He is creepy in some ways, but it was very important to me that he also be good looking, handsome, and charming. So it's more complicated, and it's believable that Julia Fox would fall in love with him as well. So that's Peter.
Absolutely. Peter, did you do any fun research for this film? Did you
Tell the truth.
Fun research. Yeah, the research for this was not unfun. Ben, I feel like the research almost was happening as we shot. Ben was giving me a lot of tutorials, hands-on tutorials about internet gambling. I had seen a cam girl or two in my day before, so it's not like I didn't know what that dynamic was like. Although I have to say I'd never done an actual private chat, and I think I maybe tried to do one time, but it was like it was so not like what it was in the script. It was just like a very brief, like, okay, now like this person, now suddenly like you're only looking at one. I don't know. I did try. I don't know if I ever told you that, Ben, but I did try to do that once. But it was so unlike what. Sometimes you, as an actor, do research, and it's so unlike actually what goes on in the movie that it's almost like, oh, I might as well just imagine this. Like, I might as well just imagine. But it was helpful because Ben does actually know a thing or two about blackjack. He really, he in fact is blackjack Jack. So he taught me a thing or two, and I'm grateful for that knowledge, honestly.
Well, I mean, I didn't really get into gambling until making this movie.
Is that true? Really? I always sort of thought that you made the movie because you were into gambling.
No, like it was never really my thing. The you know, in order to get into gambling, you have to win once. That's like the classic thing. And the last time I hung out with my mom before she passed away, we went to a casino in Tampa Bay, and me and my mom both won like $700. So there's like the last picture I have of my mom is us like flashing $100 bills like at the checkout or whatever. It's a pretty cute picture. And then so I won, and I think maybe it's because I associated with my mom, but also just because I had won, I kind of like it bit me a little bit. But I never like played online or anything. But then when it came time to do this film, I thought, well, what's a good metaphor for how because I didn't want a movie where a guy is on Facebook all day or he's on Instagram all day. So there has to be a metaphor, right? So I'm like, what's a good metaphor for that kind of dopamine rush that you get really, really fast that leaves you feeling hollow and empty afterwards? And that's gambling, you know.
Ben, I'm not so sure that I understood that metaphor when we were shooting. I took it very literally, and now I like in listening to you talk about the movie now in Q&As, I suddenly like am the genius of that decision is dawning on me. Might as well say that on a recorded Zoom call. But I really do love that because in a way it makes the character very relatable to every like sort of petty social media addict. Mm-hmm. But somehow because it's not that, I think it might be what's allowing people in.
Well, it's also using the tropes of cinema. You know, we've seen
right exactly.
Gambling guys fall in love with femme fatales in different milieus and different generations. It had a very different flavor in other generations, you know.
But he was into cam girls before that, so.
Okay, there you go. You got that go out. That's that.
I was into cam girls.
You weren't?
No.
Basically, you were.
I had like maybe like a phase for like 6 months when I was like 20 or something. Well, I mean, the thing about cam girls is, just to be like completely honest here, my experience with cam girls was mostly very boring. Probably similar to Peter's. Is like there's the scene in the movie when Jack is talking to a few of them and they're just like not even paying attention. They don't even reply to him. I feel like so many of them are like that. They must be on like 4 or 5 sites at a time. And then when you even go private with one, you're like, hey, so what do you do? And they like don't even listen. They're like not even there. I'm like, hello, clock is running, you know. So it's very. But then you know, there was like one experience where I met somebody and we like really talked for a long time and had a wonderful connection, and that's like 1 out of 100. You know? Very similar to like chat roulette, maybe that kind of dynamic where you got to go through thousands of guys masturbating and kids playing Halo before you're gonna like meet someone that you have anything in common with. You know?
Sure.
That's how you met Nikki.
yeah.
Yeah, I had my dick out. It was on chat roulette. We had a connection.
Yeah. No, I mean, cam girls was also a metaphor. One I was drawn to for cinematic reasons. 'Cause I was thinking about the dynamic of the chats, and I was thinking cam rooms are unique in that when you are the John, so to speak, in that kind of dynamic, you become a director. You say, okay, I want you to turn your head in profile. I mean, it really is that kind of perverted where it's like, you know, you're paying to create any kind of scene you want. So it's like, okay. And then you can even give them dialogue. Like, okay, I want you to like pretend like you're my boss and tell me how pathetic I am or whatever, you know? So you give these instructions and then they give them back to you. But simultaneously, you're the audience as well. So you're the whole experience is for you. It's just like, it's almost just like future of direct cinema where you make your dream come true and it's just right there and it's only for you. It's something very strange about it. And the dynamic between director and performer, but really the performer is the director as well. It's very strange. I don't know. For someone who's like fascinated by performance, it's really wild, you know. And some people are really good at the performance aspect, and some people are not, you know. Like, you've been a bad boy, you know.
And I actually had a question about how you film that. I feel like so often on films, it's no one on the other side of the phone call or the screen. And were you guys actually video chatting, or were you masturbating at a blank computer?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. Not many people have asked that when we've talked about this movie. I think there's one version of this movie that you could have made where it's always a green screen.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been maybe the Hollywood way to do it. And it's, everything's perfectly lit. And but to get better performances, it's actually this apartment we're in right now. If everybody who just saw the movie, this is Julia's cam room. And it's also the empty room where Jack's roommate had passed away. So this is just our apartment. So what we did is it's a railroad apartment with just 2 bedrooms and a kitchen in the middle. And so on one half of the apartment would be Jack's main bedroom. And here would be Julia's main workroom. And the crew would be in the kitchen. And they would actually be chatting. We just did it over Skype. Or maybe I shouldn't say that. They did it over private chat. over private cams. and on actual webcams. And then I was operating the A camera in whichever room was more relevant to the narrative at that point. So in the first half of the movie, it was mostly in there, and the second half was mostly in here. And then just for safety, we had a DSLR on the other B performer that could get like very gainy kind of footage. At the first day, we even recorded the live feed of basically what we're seeing right now, like the desktop feed. Although I didn't end up using any of that because I don't. It's not like I dislike those kind of desktop capturing movies, but that's not what we were going for at all. And it's kind of it glitches and lags. It was kind of a pain. So I didn't, that would have been too much.
Yeah. This would be such a bad movie if we hadn't done that.
I know.
I guess I felt like I was going to say the same thing, Oliver, just to underscore what a good choice that was, and I probably would have I would have been really unhappy. You could only imagine. Well, your movie would have just also sucked. Like the whole. Yeah, I mean, because Julie and I were actually able to act with each other that way. It wasn't just like you do sometimes have to. Fake it all, like fake the other person's. But for a film like Ben's, where the event is the connection that happens, that is the main event of the movie, and everything follows from that. Had he not taken the time to contrive something where that could really be happening, the movie, I mean, I'm certain it would have been a failure.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the most exciting things for me when filming a laptop with somebody on it is because it becomes a character. So you could do a conversation with kind of shot reverse shot where it's a person and they're talking to a laptop, and there's something really mysterious where in this almost Heideggerian way, the technology, the laptop itself reveals its being and its presence to you, and it reveals itself in a way that it hasn't before because now it's a character in the story. And so that there's so many shots where I'm lovingly studying this laptop, and very soon it's going to be a relic, and it's going to have this, as time goes on, it's going to have this, it's an icon too. I mean, Apple really knows how to design these sleek things that have a personality all up to themselves, but we shot the whole movie on a wide lens, primarily so there's depth, there's this 3D storybook quality where things pop out at you. It feels 3D even though it's flat. So when you're moving the camera past Jack down to his laptop, these things are like, you're suddenly in that room and you're experiencing the tactile reality of the thing. I mean, that's one of the goals of the movie, was to, in almost this documentary way, like study what it's like to live that kind of life. And it's not realism at all. There's so many things in the movie that happen that are happening on the level of metaphor, playing with genre tropes, and the third act is almost all metaphor. But at the same time, the material reality of the filming of it was super important. And that's why filming Peter actually masturbating was important, because that's not something you ever see in movies. And I wanted to show it. It's such a big part of everybody on this planet's day-to-day existence. If they say it isn't, they're lying, And that's just something that has never been seen in cinema, you know?
Yeah, I actually was wondering about that because so often when you hear about especially male nudity in films, it's like a flash of the side of Ben Affleck's penis in Gone Girl, and this has like real nudity in it and real sex. And I was wondering, especially from Peter, was there any hesitancy around that? And there's also so much conversation right now around like intimacy coordinators and that sort of thing, but on a smaller film, that's obviously not a possibility. So how did you guys make everyone feel comfortable?
I feel like you should talk to this, Peter.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just felt like we were comfortable by definition. I mean, I liked part of the reason why I did, you don't, with a movie like this, I'm not doing it I'm not doing it because it's like a paycheck. I'm doing it because like, I'm very interested in being a part of it, and I really liked Ben, and I really love Oliver, and I like, I now I adore these guys, but before I was like, yeah, I love these guys, and I love the script, and so, and I just always have, part of what I like about acting is like pushing myself, or I have modesty in life, day to day, but when I'm acting, I like I don't have it, and I'm grateful for this lack of modesty. And I think I partially got there because like watching films growing up and like dreaming about doing them, I like the performances from men and women, and that are not self-conscious. Like I always like the movies that get me, I'm suddenly drawing a blank on them, is when I see someone who, basically my least favorite thing is when I see an actor or performance and I notice their modesty and I go, oh, they didn't really want to be doing this, or they weren't comfortable. I can always tell. So I'm like, somehow, because I'm so allergic to that, I've just developed this mentality of like, oh yeah, if it needs to be done, it needs to be done. And this, like, there's this, cinema is important, and like, you need to give it your all. And if you don't, it shows. And it's that's when it becomes creepy, if you're not like willing to just, it's beautiful when you just have no mod. Like I love, I mean, it's hard to say myself. I get creeped out by seeing me, myself, but I know how to do it. I do it because when I'm in the audience and I see someone that I feel was just giving it all and allowing themselves to be seen. And, we as actors I always think it's so funny. It's like, we as actors love it when the camera captures us actually weeping or actually angry, but yet it's like, oh shit, like you're actually sexually aroused or like naked or something. That's like, oh, you can't do that. It's like, well, what? Why? I mean, like I've actually cried and actually been upset in movies, and everyone's like, good job. But then it's like, oh shit, you like showed your dick in that movie. That's crazy. Was that crazy for you? It's like, actually not as crazy as other scenes that I've done, maybe. Like, really?
Right.
I don't know. Did that answer?
That's
an answer in there.
I think I was gonna say, I think that's why Peter's such a good actor, is because he doesn't really have that modesty per se. He's not trying to hit his best angles in every shot. He's only happy if he's really revealing himself emotionally. I was gonna say, part of the danger of filming sex is that you're playing with the flame of life, because even though everyone's acting, you have to actually do it. I mean, that's one of the essential things that makes cinema is that even when you film a character walking across the street, that's a documentary of them walking across the street. They've actually gone from X to Z, and they had to actually do that thing. It's the only medium that's really like that. Maybe, I mean, in all performing arts, you have to perform the thing, but in cinema, you actually have to do it.
I have a fun anecdote around that for shooting for Private Chat. Actually, the last shot of the film before the reshoots was Ben. It was 4 a.m. in this apartment, and Ben kicked everyone out because he was like, all the crew, and was like, all right, guys, go in the living room, whatever. Like, I have to get this last masturbation shot, and and he like, if you're talking about doing it yourself, you whipped your dick out right there, and you came in Ulysses, and that was the last shot of Private Chat while the crew was just like toasting in the living room.
Well, I thought. Well, I don't know if you're a big Joyce fan, but there's a big part of Ulysses about the body and the bodily fluids interacting with the text. So I thought it'd be really. There's that part in the movie where Jack ejaculates into a copy of Ulysses, and I thought it'd be extra meaningful to actually show it. It got cut from the film. It would have been too much, too nasty. But yeah.
I don't remember that. I think I would.
No, but to flashback what I was saying, because I think it's an important thing is that filming sex is potentially exploitative because you are putting performers in a vulnerable state. So I think you have to do it. You have to be very clear about why you're doing it, and you have to make sure that the people know why they're doing it. And it isn't something that should be treated lightly, because nothing in cinema should be treated lightly. When two people kiss on screen, you could almost argue that's like the crux idea of the entire mumblecore thing that happened like 10 years ago. They were all stories about people working on a project together, and then when the moment when that's like every Joe Swammer movie, when the people acting together have to kiss, their personal lives are like shattered and torn apart because they're playing with the flame of life. I've heard about the thing you're talking about, like the on-set intimacy coordinators. We hadn't known about that at the time.
No, I mean, it was before, like, we shot this film about a year before that became a big thing, but we were still like, we did like very detailed nudity riders who were going to be nude in the film, and just like, like, you read the scripts, but this is what is expected for you, but also if you don't want to do something, you don't have to, and you can change that at any time. Nothing's going to be held against you if you do not want to do things. So we were like even though it was like, we couldn't have probably paid for an intimacy coordinator as much as we'd have needed one, like, we still were fairly conscious of that when we were doing it and trying to do it in a responsible way, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it begs the question for like a film of this scale and budget, like, would it be possible now? I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear stories about the intimacy coordinators. That's a weird job. I wonder, how do you get that training? Do you have to be like a therapist or something? Like what?
Right. I think I know there's one for The Great on Hulu, and I think they were a sex therapist. But yeah, every project I've heard that has one has a huge budget, and I was wondering, yeah.
The thing is, I've seen them only in a television context,
where there is nothing real racy, right?
Right. Well, yes, and also it maybe makes more sense in that context because there isn't a consistent director in TV. So when you're doing an independent film or a film, like, my feeling about that is that I would hope that I would want to sign on to a film where the director, I felt, could coordinate the intimacy of the film well. Like that they are someone, the director, that's like part of the direct. That's why I find that job title. Sometimes I'm like, that's an interesting person to throw in the mix, because I always, traditionally, you expect all of the coordinating of all the intimacy to be something that you want the director to do, that you trust this person, so that you wouldn't need a third party to lubricate, puns intended, I guess. That
I can hear somebody like Cassavetes saying, like, the job of a director is to be an intimacy coordinator in a metaphorical sense.
But it does make sense more in a television context, because those directors are not always there to massage the acting. They are there maybe more to be just technicians, or they don't know you've been doing it for a season and they come in just once, and so maybe there is someone. It's good to have someone there whose job is just to make sure that a sex scene isn't uncomfortable, because maybe the director doesn't have the experience working with the cast or whatever it is. But in an indie film context, it would be surprising. I haven't yet seen it, though I expect to, I'm sure, in the future.
Yeah, and that makes sense. The casting in this film is incredible. I'd love to know, of course, how Julia Fox came on, but also the actors who play Will and Larry are just so authentic feeling and fantastic. I'd love to know how they came on as well.
So Julia, it's kind of by chance. Actually, it starts with Buddy Duress, who plays Larry. You know, I was a big fan of him in Heaven Knows What and Good Time. So just kind of like tracked him down through his then agent at his time, and went and visited him. He lives in Astoria in Queens. So I just went out and hung out with him a few times and convinced him to do it. Turns out that Buddy's agent at the time had been friends with Julia Fox, and he's like, I know this incredible person that's never been in a movie, but has this. The words he described was like a millennial Marilyn Monroe, and he's like, and I really think you should consider her for Scarlett, even though she's never acted. Just trust me, she's great. And the crux of the matter is that she had worked as a dominatrix very briefly when she was a lot younger in the Lower East Side, which you can read all about in the New York Times. She I think whoever is doing her PR has made that kind of like part of her origin story, learning how to act kind of story, as it were. So I met up with her and we hit it off. She was really cool. She was super down to earth, and like the line in the movie where I asked, where Jack asks, so when did you get into doming? The answer that she gives is the answer Julia gave me on the day when we met. I was like, so how did you get into, being a dominatrix? And she's like, well, it started when I was like 3. I would ride everybody around on the playground like ponies. And, that's stuff like that is too good. When you meet somebody like that, you're like, oh, don't mess this up because there's a weird alchemy at work happening. And crazy enough, I don't know
this part, but we did an audition with her, and it was kind of like awesome. Remember? It
was. Yeah, we did one audition at Julia's apartment where just Oliver, me, and Nikki, all of us here except went to Julia's apartment, and then and we just had them do that first scene where they kind of meet, and Jack talks about C Stream and she talks about her painting. And it was amazing. It was really good. We're like, okay, we got it.
Kind of like, holy shit. I remember being like, oh wow, like this is amazing. I was like, this is great. It was like, I gotta say, it was a very special audition read. It felt like I was excited to do the movie, but I remember being like, oh, this could be great. This is gonna work.
Yeah, and one of the nice things about Peter as well is he has as a director and an actor, he has a good eye for is this going to work? Is this person I'm playing with good? Do we have chemistry? And Peter responding well to that audition is like, okay, no, this is going to work.
Oh yeah, and don't forget Keith. Keith's manager too represent. It was like this I don't know if you already said this because I had a Census Bureau guy come, but it was really lucky that you wanted Buddy and Keith, and they their manager just so happened to just start working with Julia. It was very good luck.
Yeah, definitely. The other actor is by far the closest relationship to me is the older guy, Kevin Mosia, who plays Will, the painter. He's one of my oldest friends in New York, and this is the 3rd feature we've done together now. So I've kind of made it a thing that he always has to be somewhere in all my films. But one of the things I really, truly love about him is that he'll do anything for cinema. And the second film I made, we painted an entire interior of a house in Staten Island. And the plan was that when we wrapped, the whole cast and crew would help me repaint the house interiors back to white. So it'd be fine for the people that rented us the house. Now everybody after 25 days of shooting is like, see you, Ben, I'll see you next year. Nobody stuck around to paint except Kevin. Kevin rolled up, and he actually is a house painter by trade. That's his day job. And so he's like, what colors do you need? I'm on it. And so me and Kevin, kind of makes me teared up when I think about it, for 4 days painted this house. And we even had to do it twice because the people didn't like the colors we chose. They're like, oh, we didn't want it to be white. We wanted it to be like this color. And because they had us for that entire 2 weeks, we couldn't say no because they gave us such a deal on the house. So me and Kevin repainted this entire house twice And I remember being there, and I had this idea. I said, Kevin, the next movie I do, I don't know what's going to happen in it, but you're going to play a house painter in it. And so it was very important for me to honor that commitment. And while I was finding all these great actors like Buddy and Peter and Julia and Keith, I was like, you know what? Kevin has to be part of this ensemble, though. You know,
He's fantastic. Yeah.
he's amazing. He's a great actor. Yeah.
And the film also, it's funny, like I watch a lot of films for work, and usually like at 5 o'clock I shut it off, start the next day. But this was one where I was like, I've got to find out what happens to these people. And it struck such a great tone between grit and also it's weirdly sweet. It's like a rom-com with a bunch of people you hope you never meet. And I was wondering if how hard it was to keep that tone.
It was so hard. That's the hardest thing about making this film. And if I could do it again, there'd be some things that I would work on even still. But that's kind of like the hook of the movie, or which is that it uses tropes from the erotic thriller and noir type of film, but at some point it shifts and becomes a romantic comedy, albeit with criminals. But so this is one thing Oliver really helped on. We were trying to, in the script, it was very confused. And that's kind of a thing that I personally am really interested in my own films, is always exploring tonal ambiguity. I really like when you're not quite sure what movie you're watching. And I like borrowing tropes from so many different things. But sometimes it can shoot you in the foot, because if you're not clear about your choices, then you're not really making choices, you know? So I think we finally hit upon that thing, which I don't know, maybe it doesn't work for some people because they're expecting some kind of payoff with guns and something really thrilling. And, you know, maybe for some of the romantic comedy people, it doesn't satisfy their things. But I think we're in this no man's land that we opened up a new vista, I think. And I think maybe the future of movies, especially because it's going to be a lot of movies made on this scale without the rules and regulations of studios, are going to be more genre fluid. And it makes the audience have to do a lot of work, you know? But I mean, yeah, a version of this story, kind of like the incel version of this movie that I talked about at the beginning. You could see this becoming like a Taxi Driver kind of movie or something, where Jack is a psychopath and he breaks into the apartment and, you know, violence happens. It was very important to me that, well, all these characters are shady and they're lost and they're all deceiving each other. They are sweet. Is a rule to me that, like, no one's violent, and there may be like emotionally violent. I guess Keith's character is gaslighting Julia the whole time. But the other thing was to make it clear that at the end of the movie, these characters have found a genuine connection. It's not a happily ever after Cinderella story. I don't think. I mean, it might be up for the audience to decide, but I don't think these characters are actually going to get together. But you know, one of the big thematic questions of the movie, which I have Jack say a bunch of times, is this idea of, under the way our relationships are structured now through social media and late capitalism, is genuine connection possible, or is everything just transactional? And, you know,
I think that's the thing that's so interesting. Like, that was what really turned me onto the script when I first read it. I think is this thing of, like, all our interactions on Instagram, on Facebook. Like, there's this transactional thing, like, you like me, I like you, you give me dopamine, I give you dopamine. And then you take something like Kamin, which is inherently transactional, and you sort of go, okay, well, if we put this thing that's transactional back into this system of communication that's transactional, what comes out of it? Is it something that's transactional, or can you actually find some connection in it? And I think, you know, that ambiguity is quite present throughout a lot of the film, and something that speaks a lot wider than just what happens in the film. So yeah, I think that was like one of the big things for me with the script.
Yeah, I'll say one of the key things I was trying to convey with Jack is that he's a character with a nihilistic point of view on a cerebral level, but on a day-to-day level, he loves people. that's something I really want to come across. Like his interaction with Will and Larry is very loving, and he's like a really, you can tell he gets high off of hanging out with other people. He's an extroverted character, and that was super important to me. Like he comes alive as soon as he has some kind of connection, which is, so you can understand why he's so alienated and lost alone in that apartment. But yet, he's inherited this very bleak point of view. This, you know, sort of the what I call is the metaphor of an ATM. You give me data, I'll give you capital or information. And then, but I'm not sure he actually believes it. He's just stuck there for a second. And in my lowest low moments, when I'm in something like a depression, I do believe that. But of course, you don't actually live your life at that. And of course, you don't actually believe that. But yeah, like all the characters, I think, have these genuine moments together, which is, you know, that's one thing that I feel like a lot of people that don't understand sex work, they can't empathize. They have a hard time empathizing with the sex worker, but they have an even harder time empathizing with the Johns, and empathizing that even though it's a very capitalistic, crude scenario, a genuine connection happens. And a lot of times it doesn't happen in an erotic way. It happens in this like comic way, like what we're doing right now. It's kind of funny. And it's like, oh, and we're like outside of society right now, and we have this shared thing together. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that actually, you know, I feel like as a society, we're starting to finally more openly talk about sex work, especially around OnlyFans and that sort of thing. And I was wondering if working on this project affected how you thought about sex work or changed your perspective in any way?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I'll say a strange anecdote was that I early on I decided to interview a bunch of cam girls where I got on one of the sites, and I said, hey, I'll do the thing where the meter can run, but you know, I just want to ask you some questions. You can be as candid or as secretive as you want, but I'm like doing research for a film. And so many of them were the most cliche Lifetime stories of like, oh yeah, I have like 11 kids at home, I'm in Ukraine, my boyfriend also does sex work, but we both hate it. And it was like, oh God, I'm so sorry to hear that, you know? And it's like, it would be so many of those. And then, you know, it's only really in the United States, and I'm sure in other countries as well, but where I really came across people that were kind of doing it to empower themselves and like just putting themselves through college or something like that. But so in some sense, my movie it doesn't deviate from reality per se, because it's not like people like Scarlett don't exist, but I wanted to not show the sad side of sex work. I wanted to show the positive side about it, because I wanted this movie to be incredibly sex positive. And actually, I have something right here, which this book changed my life, or not changed my life, but changed the life of this film. So this is film theorist wrote this book called Sex Radical Cinema, Carol Siegel. And it's a really good book that I recommend for anybody interested in, you know, kind of academic theories of progressivism in sex and cinema. And like her premise in the book is that mainstream cinema has been so puritanical and afraid of sex that in order to be progressive in cinema towards sex, you have to liberate it per se. And so the only way to show you know, to make a radical feminist film, if that's your goal, is to show a woman receiving pleasure for no other reason than pleasure. So like in most movies, the woman will sleep with the spy in order to get information. So the sex was part of the plot. It was exposition, just to get that data and to have a quick little stopgap in the plot with some titillation before the next thing, you know? So her whole thing is like, you need to show a character having sex just because they want to get off, and then show them getting off, and that's it. And then that's the only way that sex can be radical in the film. And she's very leftist, so she talks about how, you know, sex is anti-militaristic. There's all these different theories. There's some things in the book that are kind of, she goes really far. She says, like, in the first chapter, it's about pedophilia in cinema, where she talks about how, for example, like pedophilia is only shown in cinema as like this decadent, scary, monstrous thing where it's almost like usually uses a stopgap in a plot, where in like a Law and Order style show, it's like this character is attracted to little younger girls or boys, so therefore they're a monster. Whereas her whole thing is like empathizing with someone's perversions would be a progressive cinema. So she cites this film where there's like a mutual and consensual relationship between like a basketball coach and a young boy, and kind of says like, as problematic as this is going to be for so many people watching the movie, this is radical because it doesn't judge them, and it kind of forces you to empathize with people in that situation. So I was thinking about this book a lot, and so I was thinking it's really important to have a sex worker who's in it because they're good at it. You know, it's a skill, and they enjoy it. And obviously, Scarlett's character is very lost because she's not finding fulfillment in her artistic life or in her personal life. But you know, and I'm not sure camming is like a full-time life profession, but for now, it's a good job for her to have in her 20s or whatever, you know. But like, so showing the scene where she is masturbating on her bed after Jack has logged off, and she's thinking about Jack. That was an important scene for me, because it's like, okay, she's doing this just for herself, and you know, you never really see that in movies.
I think that's one of the things that's so different about this film compared to like Shame, which has like a fairly similar protagonist who's like very handsome, very attractive. In Shame, he's more successful, but in Shame, it's like so judgy, and it's just like these are bad people doing bad things, bad. And
like, Shane has the most offensive sequence where
the rock bottom scene.
Yeah, his sex addiction is so bad that when he hits rock bottom, he goes down to this gay nightclub, and it's like it's all lit like hell. It's like, I mean, I get that the filmmaker
gets a blowjob.
He gets a blowjob from a man, and the music's like dun dun dun, and there's like the fiery red. It's like, you know, it's some kind of metaphor to the descent of the core of his addiction or whatever. And it's just like, wow, that was really homophobic.
Like Friday night.
Even though the director, whatever the director's, you know, own thing going on, it just really struck me as that's not the right way you do a sex addiction story. If you've seen the movie Shame. And I bet.
All right, well, thank you guys so much. I think we can wrap up there, and thank you at home for watching.
Thank you for having us.